Okay guys, welcome back. This is your old pal Hondo doing a video for you guys. Survival video, and we're just taking a little walk down a mountain path here. Well, it's in my backyard, but a lot of you people don't realize that you can find resources in your own backyards, guys, for survival. Now we're walking along here on the side of the road. Now what you see here, this plant here, what you see right here, this is a wild yucca plant. As you can see, this is in the middle of spring. It hasn't had its seed pod grow, but right there is its seed pod. Now that seed pod grows in 3 different stages. Little seeds, like one big pod, and then it goes out to a flowering pod, and then later on it has yucca fruit. Now these yucca trees, these yucca plants are very rare where I live, so finding one of these as a resource is very rare, but out west they grow like crazy. Now this plant as a resource plant is good for making cordage like no other plant besides maybe dog's bane, and you can eat the fruit that come off the stalk, and the stalk right there can also be used as a hand drill set or making shelters from this seed pod here. It grows usually like high up from the plant, but even the leaves can be used when they're dried to as a fire tinder as well. You have to scrape these, and I'm going to harvest some of this and make cordage out of it later. But yucca is a really good plant, guys, for a resource plant for survival. So if you see one in the cave, it's a very similar plant to this, but we don't have agave here because it doesn't grow. Agave is what they call Spanish bayonet, but they usually have little thorns that grow on the leaves, unlike yucca. But this is definitely yucca, you can tell, and this is a very good resource plant. You know, it could also, the root system is also got a lot of starch in it, like a potato, and you can eat that or use it as a soap or a shampoo as well. Okay guys, here's a closer look at that pitch pine. Again, as you can tell, that's a pitch pine with the bark, and they don't really have too many leaves on them, but if you can see that up there, you got the pine cones and the leaves. Now on these lower knots here on a pitch pine, you can take a knife or a saw and break that off, and that has a lot of resin in it for fat wood on these lower branches, and you can smell it in there. This is still a young pine, so you want to kind of find a big one, but there's enough resin or terpene in here to start a fire. You need to make an emergency fire, and these little lower branches make good kindling when they're dry and high up like that for a fire. You can grab a bunch of these little branches to make fire, and you can take these bigger dead branches up here to make feather sticks without having to split wood. Right here we actually got a tulip poplar tree. Right here is a smaller one. This is a baby tulip poplar tree. Now these smaller ones are good for making cordage, so keep that in mind. A good cordage tree, only second to maybe dog's bane or yucca when it comes for survival. You can process this up, take a knife and strip it down the center and pull the bark off these littler trees to make cordage as well. Really good cordage tree too. And you can make shelter with a bigger tree by taking off the roofing and laying it over a lean-to or something like that, and throwing dirt on top of it, leaves, and then some moss mats on top of it to insulate your shelters. This is a good tree as well, right along with this pitch pine. Now this pitch pine is not old enough really to grow anything. To get good fat wood out of it, you have to find an older one. So if you find an older pitch pine, even the leaves, you can tell the leaves right here are 3 leaves. I can see it right here, 3 leaves. That means if it's 4, it's white pine. If it's 3, it is pitch pine. So remember that, guys, if you're in the field. Okay guys, another plant we got here in the middle of the winter, but is a good resource plant, is this one right here. Usually it has like a nice little white flower growing on it, and it grows sticking straight up like this. This is a horseweed, And this is a good hand drill weed. The bigger it is, the thicker it is. You can use it for, you know, making hand drills and stuff like that. You got to scrape the bark off of it, cut it to size. To make a spindle, you can use the yucca seed stalk as a hearth board for this weed. Now you'll know what it looks like because it has these little white flowers and it grows sticking straight up like that. Okay guys, this red weed here growing out with all these thorns in it, this is raspberry bushes. So these guys are getting ready to throw raspberries. Now the other ones that are green are blackberry bushes. It's another good resource for getting some berries to eat. This is we're not in the season of berries though right now, so in the middle of the winter you're not going to get any good berries off of this, but you can tell by the beet red thorns on it. It's a good raspberry plant. You'll find raspberries on these, or they call them okay guys, these are native grasses here. Now usually these are good for making tinder bundles by stripping the leaves off of them when they're dry like this and getting that inner leaf like that, and you get a bunch of this and you work it down in your hands. It's like what they call sawgrass. Or okay guys, you know, I didn't find any dog's bane. It does grow here, so if you do find some dog's bane, it has a V-shaped seed pod like this, and it has a bunch of weird looking leaves and a red stalk and grows out like this, but I'm not seeing any. But we do got a lot of sawgrass here. Now this sawgrass could also be made into cordage as well, you know, sawgrass plants. Also a good fire tender as well, sawgrass is. This stuff right here is dry enough to make a tinder bundle out of. So you can make a nice tinder bundle out of this stuff for fire making. You just break it down with your hands to make a nice fire tinder bundle out of it. If it's moist and wet, depending on if it's like really winter time and everything's frozen over, you can stick this stuff in your pocket to dry it out. That's another tip guys, to drying out your fire material fairly fast with your pocket or a one of those foraging bags. You can stick this in there. Basically most of the resources you guys are going to find in the woods are going to be growing in hollers and in between two mountains, or they're going to be growing on the side of the road or on the side of paths and clearings in the mountains for fire making. Pines grow on that, well at least here they do. They grow near the paths and hollers and stuff like that. So if you're looking for resources, that's also another tip guys, is the go on your paths, go into hollers and clearings, and usually around the outskirts of the clearings, that's where these plants grow, right along with dog's bane. Now birch is the only thing I didn't find here today guys, because we don't have a lot of birch or cedar, as well, at least in this area. The lower in elevation you get, that's where you find a lot of the white birch trees. We do have a yellow birch tree here and a silver birch tree here that grows in this stuff right here. Is some of the best fire making material you guys will ever find right here. This is basically sawgrass. It grows pretty much everywhere. So if you guys are wanting an easy way to make a fire tinder bundle, that is the easiest way to make a fire tinder bundle. With sawgrass or just regular native grasses, make the best fire tinder. You have to roll it in your hand and break it down a little bit to open up these fibers in these plants. You can also make cordage out of this type of grass as well. Not this grass in particular, but the you know, the stalk grasses right there. And pine trees too. If you find a pine tree, you can dig around its root base. A pitch pine, and dig up its little tiny roots also makes a good cordage too as well. Okay guys, what we got here, since we're doing the whole urban environment theme guys, we're doing the whole foraging for resources urban theme here guys. Basically the type of survival you guys will be doing is in your own backyard. These survivalists that are telling you you need to on desert islands and stuff, you don't need to do that guys. Your backyard is basically where you're going to be able to survive. Now this is a birch tree, a white birch, or commonly known as yellow birch. This is in early spring. This is kind of what the bark will look like. You'll see a lot of these down in marshy areas, in lower in elevation areas. This is more of an ornamental tree. It's in a parking lot, but if you can find one of these trees, it's a great resource. You can stick a small bamboo straw in here and get the sap and use that sap as a pitch, or you can use it to brew mead, birch mead. The bark itself can be used to make canoes. A lot of the Native Americans made birch pitch canoes as well, and the bark itself can be used as a fire starter if you scrape a little bit of it off. This is probably one of the best fire starters, and you can use this to make baskets as well whenever the bark is green. When the bark is dead, like you find one of these dead yellow birches, when they fall over, the bark will come right off of it. And you can also use this for shelter building too, for roofing. And right here we have chaga. Now this is a small piece of chaga, not a really big one. So these little mushrooms grow out of here. Also the horseshoe mushrooms grow out of these trees as well too. Usually chaga is like little open spots that grow, fungus that grow on these trees as well. You just see it, it's like a little black piece of gnarly black brown looking fungus that grows on these. Now this fungus here can be used as a fire starter. Horseshoe mushroom as well. If you can get a bigger piece of this, makes a really good fire tinder. We're gonna take this one actually for fire tinder for flint and steel. You can break it up. Now you have to skin these when they're really big. Now this is really too small, and I think King's George plumes grow on these as well. Fungus, little black round funguses that grow on these trees, but I'm not seeing one on there right now. So, but you know, this is the white birch tree, guys. So most of these survivals will tell you, most of these guys that are doing these survival videos don't seem to realize most of the survival that you guys will be doing is basic backyard survival, man. In your own backyard, guys. These trees grow everywhere. The white birches, the silver birches, the black birch trees, the yellow birch trees, they grow everywhere, guys. In the Northeast, all the way up to Canada and West Virginia, and they do grow in other places. Now, a few other plants that I couldn't find. Also, too, the conch mushrooms grow on these. So if you find one of these birch trees, and you got a big old nasty fungus that grows off the side of this, it's called amadou conch mushroom. You just take your knife and cut them off, and they're the best fire tinder you'll ever use. All right, guys, it's the last tree I'm gonna mess with today, and we'll get back to the house and show you all the resources we pulled in just about 10 minutes for making cordage. And also too, one thing I did forget about the birch, you can take the wood from the birch itself. When you cut this tree down, you can take birch and put it, it's very much like a pitch pine. You can cut this tree down and put the wood in a small paint can and dig a hole underneath it and stick another can underneath it with a hole on the bottom and the top to make pitch from the wood. And this wood also makes a good charcoal. That's the leftover in the can when you catch it on fire. From the paint can will be the charcoal left over from this, and that charcoal can be used for making a water filter. It can be used as high carbon coal to cook with, or to forge high carbon tools. Okay, guys, in that short time of foraging, we got enough leaves to make cordage from yucca. And you break these down by smashing them with a rock, and then taking a fork or a spoon to scrape over the top of them, let them dry out, and then smash them with a rock again, and use a fork as a basically a flax rake in order to get these inner fibers, to turn them into fibers to make cordage. And then you twist it until it turns into a knot, and then you overlap it to make cordage. And after you get done letting it sit for about a month after you dry these out to make cordage out of them. You can turn them into cordage with the yucca leaves. We have the sawgrass as our tender bundle, and we have dried yucca leaves, which will go into a tender bundle as well. All this stuff you can commonly find on the side of your road, basically wherever you live. And yucca makes some of the best cordage, right along with dog's bane. You can find dog's bane as well. We have our small pile over here, and we have our next big pile for our fire starting. So for an emergency survival fire, we have pine and birch mixed with the smalls and the next to biggest smalls. Now, you don't necessarily need a big knife to cut firewood. All this stuff I broke off by hand and on the lower parts of standing trees. So all this dried material you can find, and you can get a lot of this. And for an emergency fire, if you don't have any tool at all, or a knife or anything, all this stuff I got by hand. I pulled it off, broke it off by hand. So if you don't have a survival knife or even a knife in the field, you can harvest this stuff. Even the bigger wood that's like 3 diameter, you can stick it in between 2 trees to break it off to get your firewood. You don't necessarily, and the type of wood you want to get though, if it's like 3 diameters, is on dead trees that are falling over and the limbs are sticking straight up, that are easy to break off. And you can break this wood by hand. You don't necessarily need a tool to chop this wood and split it up to get a fire going, guys. And if you got wet wood, you can stand it right beside your fire in order to dry it out. We're going to show you how to make a fire from all the resources that we gathered. Besides the green leaves here, we're going to process those up later on in another video to make cordage. We have our sawgrass tinder bundle, and we have dried yucca leaves. I want to show you how to break that all down in order to get a fire tinder bundle going. Okay, now this dried yucca could be made into cordage the way it sits. We're going to save a few pieces for that. This dried yucca here, if you could see it, it's kind of dark out here, but this could be used as cordage right off the bat, guys. You can pull this apart and use this as cordage. But this, a little bit of this dried yucca is very reminiscent to tulip poplar and tulip poplar bark, or it's very reminiscent to tulip poplar bark when it burns, and birch as well. We're going to take a couple of this, like jute twine, the yucca, and pull it apart to expose these fibers to work it down. This is how you work down your tinder bundles, guys, to get a fire going. This will also work for flint and steel. This stuff's been in my pocket for a good hour or so, so this should be dry enough to make a fire. You use your hand to break it down like this, to break it up, to make your natural fibrous tinder for the inside of your tinder bundle with the grass for your bird's nest. To get this going, you just want to work this stuff out here. You could use a fork if you don't have anything, like a knife. So this is basically how to make a survival fire with no knife or anything. So we're taking some of this dried yucca for the center of the tinder bundle, and I stuck this stuff in my in the inner part of my coat for my bird's nest. This is how you make a good bird's nest, guys. And then we got our grass here. You could break it up like this to make your tinder bundle. This stuff is dry enough to go already when we pulled it off the ground. And inner part of this, you want to put this dried yucca in here like this as the center of the tinder bundle. Now this would be a good tinder bundle for making flint and steel as well. You put your tar cloth in the center there with flint and steel. But we're going to use a ferrocerium rod, but this is one of the best tinder bundles for ferrocerium rods too as well. So you don't necessarily need fat wood to start a fire, guys. This tinder bundle right here will go real quick. We don't have a fireplace, guys. We're going to use this old grill I got laying around. But if you're in a camping situation, you can dig a small hole in the ground and surround it with stones. And if you don't have any cup or anything like that, or a metal container to boil water, you can find an old stump and take your hatchet and knock a big section out of that stump, and then take the embers from your fire and put it inside that spot that you knock out to make a basically make a makeshift water boiler. You can put some stones in this fire and get them hot, and then stick them in that hollowed out piece of wood that you make with the embers from your fire. It takes a long time to do it, but then you can use the stones from this fire to put in that hollowed out section of wood with water in it to disinfect water, or desalinate water to drink from creeks. Okay, we got our yucca and grass tinder bundle. I don't know how good you guys can see that, but we got that yucca tinder bundle in there, and we got our ferrocerium rod here, guys. Let me show you how to get this going real quick. There you go. Got this fire going real quick with the yucca and grass tinder bundle. Stick them dry limbs on top of it, and that should go right there, guys. There's your emergency fire starter. That's your emergency fire, guys. Started with yucca and grass tinder bundles. You don't necessarily need fat wood to start a fire, guys. This is plenty right here to get it going, but you may want to blow on that to there you go. Got it going now. We'll throw the next big stuff on there when this gets up. All this stuff is kind of dry to damp-ish. But there you guys go. That's how you start an emergency fire for a survival situation. Had a little trick to getting it going, but we got her going, guys. So after we put the next biggest twigs on here, this will go for a good while before you put the bigger stuff on there. Put these next to big twigs on there, and that'll get you an emergency fire going no time flat without a knife. If you had a fire starter, you're good to go. If not, you're screwed. You're gonna have to use a hand drill or a bow drill, guys. Hope you like this video on foraging for resources. Fairly easy, and how to make a fire at the end of it with all the resources that we found, all in nature, guys. You guys take it easy. It's been your old pal Hondo from Hillbilly Tactical. Peace out, everybody.